Listen, I don't have a problem with you carrying it,
Yeah.
but I really need you to point it out.
Absolutely, there you go.
Because you're scaring the hell out of everyone.
Gun control pertains to laws and rules that limit access to particular kinds of guns, prohibit the ownership of certain firearms, or specify where certain firearms may be carried. Gun regulation is a hotly debated issue in the United States that sparks discussion about individual rights, state and federal monitoring, and public safety. In order to reduce the high rate of gun-related violence and fatalities in the United States, proponents of gun control call for more regulations on the sale and transfer of weapons, while opponents contend that people have a democratic right to carry arms. So for today's video, join me as we tackle 5 facts that you don't know about gun control bill. But before we get into it, do me a favor and smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button for notifications whenever a new video is published. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Number 1. Court cases and significant legislation from the 20th century. The U.S. Congress has passed laws governing the possession of firearms, and the Supreme Court has rendered decisions in various instances. The nation's first significant federal gun control law was the National Firearms Act, or NFA, of 1934. The legislation placed restrictions on the sale and possession of high-risk weapons such as machine guns, and mandated the registration of certain firearms. It also levied taxes on the manufacturing and sale of firearms. Additional laws were created by the Government Weapons Act, or FFA, of 1938, which forbade certain people from purchasing firearms and required federal permits for gun maker and dealers, which forbade certain people from purchasing firearms and required federal permits for gun makers and dealers. The United States v. Miller decision by the Supreme Court in 1939 maintained the NFA and established the precedent that members of active regulated state guard or militia groups were entitled to the right to carry guns. The Gun Control Act, or GCA, of 1968, which was enacted in the aftermath of the killings of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was the next huge component of federal gun control measures. The NFA and the FFA were both extended by the GCA. The legislation prohibited the sale of weapons to those who use illicit substances, have mental illnesses, are minors, fugitives from justice, are criminals, or have been dishonorably discharged from the military. It also outlawed mail-order sales of all firearms and ammunition. The Supreme Court strengthened regulations when it affirmed the strong gun control legislation of New Jersey in Burton v. Sills and the federal rule prohibiting criminals from possessing weapons in Lewis v. United States. Number 2. The Second Article. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which was adopted as part of the Bill of Rights on December 15, 1791, guarantees the individual's right to keep and bear weapons. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be violated because a properly regulated militia, being essential to the security of a free state, must not be infringed. Early in the 21st century, there was much discussion over the Second Amendment's specific intent and meaning. So, at the time it was put into place, every state had a militia made up of regular citizens who served as part-time soldiers to protect settlers on land that Native Americans claimed as their own, and to fight off any attacks from foreign powers, some of which still held colonies that the United States later took over. The Second Amendment is interpreted by proponents of gun regulation as securing each individual citizen's right to keep and bear weapons. They contend that the amendment safeguards the rights of the general populace since white males of military age in every family were obligated by colonial rule to be armed and prepared for self-defense and other military situations. As a result, the amendment simultaneously ensured that every citizen had access to weapons by ensuring weapons for the army. Gun control opponents also contend that the phrase "right of the people" in the Second Amendment has the same significance as it does in the First Amendment, which protects freedoms of assembly and religion. Number 3. Pros and cons of banning assault weapons. The benefit is that, despite the claims of many supporters of gun rights, shooting and self-defense do not need the efficiency and firepower of automatic weapons and large ammo magazines. In shooting incidents, assault rifles have a reputation for being able to harm and kill huge crowds of people. The majority of citizens are in favor of a federal assault weapon prohibition. Supporting such a law would demonstrate the public's will to many lawmakers. The danger of harm from an unintentional discharge of a firearm is always there, but the potential damage from an unintentional discharge of an automatic weapon is substantially higher. On the other hand, some people could see the prohibition of all firearms as a violation of the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. All assault weapons that are marketed lawfully because federal legislation prohibits the importation of foreign assault weapons are produced locally, boosting local economies and fostering further innovation. The majority of gun fatalities are self-inflicted and do not involve automatic guns. Therefore, a federal assault weapons prohibition would have little effect on the number of gun deaths. Number 4. 21st century approaches to gun control. Barack Obama was president through a number of mass shootings, such as the killings of 49 people at a Florida nightclub in 2016 and the murders of 27 children and staff at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. Due to congressional inaction, Obama issued executive orders that increased the scope of background checks to include firearms purchased at gun shows and digitally, called for more federal agents to process background checks, promoted the use of smart guns, and mandated that states disclose more information about individuals who are prohibited from purchasing firearms. The next government under Donald Trump revoked the previous decree. Number 5. Loopholes in legislation. Individuals who may not otherwise be able to acquire weapons legally may be able to do so because of legislative gaps. One way to get around the background check obligation, for instance, is to buy weapons from an unregistered vendor who doesn't run the necessary checks. Even though it's known as the gun show loophole, these purchases may happen anywhere, even online. Most states permit the temporary lending of guns as well as the inheritance or gifting of firearms. Within one's own state, unlicensed gun transfers are permitted, but interstate transactions are not. Young people may acquire long weapons, such as rifles and shotguns, from an unlicensed firearms dealer in accordance with federal law and the laws of several states. Organizations for children's safety have long pushed for federal legislation that would increase the minimum age to possess any kind of handgun, and urged for rules that would keep kids from having access to firearms in the house. That concludes our video. So what do you think about the gun control bill? Have you ever heard one of these facts before? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Before leaving, don't forget to like, subscribe, and bell for notifications of our future content. With that being said, I will see you in the next one.